never believed money could reveal who people truly were, until the day my grandfather's will was read. The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and expensive coffee. Heavy curtains blocked the sunlight, making the room feel smaller than it was. My parents sat in the front row, perfectly dressed, whispering to each other with barely hidden excitement. For 20 years, they had waited for this moment. My grandfather, Henry Lawson, had been one of the wealthiest men in our town. Properties, investments, businesses, everyone knew his estate was worth millions. And my parents were absolutely certain that everything would finally belong to them. They didn't even try to hide their confidence. My mother adjusted her necklace and smiled at relatives like she'd already won. My father leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers impatiently, as if the lawyer was wasting his time by delaying the obvious. I sat quietly in the corner. Unlike them, I wasn't expecting anything. Grandpa and I were close, but not because of money. While my parents visited him only on holidays or when bills were due, I visited every weekend. We played chess. I listened to his stories. Sometimes we said nothing at all. The lawyer, Mr. Collins, finally entered the room carrying a thick folder. The conversation stopped instantly. He adjusted his glasses and began formally. "Thank you all for coming. Today we will read the final will and testament of Mr. Henry Lawson." My mother squeezed my father's hand, barely containing her excitement. The reading started with small donations, charities, distant relatives, staff members. My parents looked bored, exchanging looks that clearly said, "Get to the important part." Then the lawyer paused. He turned a page slowly. "And now, regarding the primary estate." My parents sat up straight. This was it. The moment they had waited 2 decades for. The lawyer cleared his throat and read a single sentence. And in that second, the entire room changed. I leave the majority of my estate. Not to my children, but to my grandson. Silence. Absolute silence. For a moment, nobody moved, as if the words hadn't fully registered. Then my mother laughed. A sharp, nervous laugh. "That's not funny," she said quickly. "There must be a mistake." My father stood up immediately. "Read that again." The lawyer calmly repeated the sentence. This time slower. Clearer. Every word landed like a hammer. Color drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw tightened as anger replaced disbelief. "You manipulated him," my father suddenly said, pointing at me. "You turned him against us." I didn't even know what to say. I was just as shocked as everyone else. The lawyer raised his hand calmly. "Please sit down. The will is legally verified," but my parents weren't listening anymore. My mother's voice rose louder. "We took care of him for years. This is impossible." Several relatives exchanged uncomfortable looks. Everyone in the room knew the truth. They rarely visited Grandpa unless they needed money. My father grabbed the documents from the table, scanning them desperately as if searching for an error that didn't exist. And that's when the lawyer said something that made the room freeze again. Mr. Lawson left additional instructions. He looked directly at my parents. He asked me to continue only if you reacted exactly like this. The room went completely silent. My parents slowly turned toward him. "What instructions?" my father asked. The lawyer opened a sealed envelope. "This," he said quietly, "is a handwritten letter from your father, and it was addressed to everyone in the room." The lawyer unfolded the letter carefully. I recognized Grandpa's handwriting immediately, steady, confident, unmistakably his. He began reading aloud. "To my children, if you are hearing this, it means you are angry." A nervous murmur spread through the room. "I watched for many years as you treated family like an investment. You visited when you needed money, disappeared when I needed company." My mother shook her head violently. "This is ridiculous." But the lawyer continued. "You forgot birthdays. You ignored calls. When I was in the hospital, you sent flowers instead of yourselves." Every sentence felt heavier than the last. I remembered those days clearly, sitting beside Grandpa while he waited for visitors who never came. The letter continued. But my grandson came, not for inheritance, not for obligation, but because he cared. My chest tightened. I am not rewarding loyalty with money, the letter said. I am recognizing love that already existed. My father slammed his hand on the table. This is manipulation. The liar didn't stop. For 20 years, you waited for my death more patiently than you ever waited to spend time with me. Gasps filled the room. Relatives looked away from my parents, embarrassed for them. And if you reacted with anger today, the lawyer read, please understand this decision was never punishment. It was truth. The letter ended with one final line. Family is proven by presence, not entitlement. The room was completely silent. My parents stood frozen, exposed in front of everyone. But Grandpa wasn't finished yet, because attached to the letter was one final instruction. The lawyer lifted another document. Mr. Lawson also requested this be announced publicly. My parents looked terrified now. The estate includes a foundation, he explained, created in the grandson's name. I blinked in surprise. A foundation dedicated to elderly care, ensuring no one experiences loneliness in their final years. Suddenly, everything made sense. Grandpa hadn't wanted revenge. He wanted accountability. The lawyer continued, your grandfather believed wealth should reflect values. My mother sat down slowly, tears forming, not from sadness, but humiliation. My father said nothing anymore. For the first time in my life, they had no control over the narrative. No excuses. No image to protect. Just truth. As people began leaving the room, several relatives approached me quietly, offering congratulations, but I barely heard them. All I could think about was Grandpa sitting across from me during our last chess game. He had smiled and said, one day people show you who they really are. Just watch carefully. That day had finally come. The inheritance wasn't money. It was clarity. And as I walked out of the lawyer's office, I realized something powerful. My grandfather's final act wasn't revenge fueled by anger. It was justice built on truth. And sometimes the strongest revenge isn't hurting people back. It's letting the truth speak when you no longer have to.